Pompeii is one of the most famous and most visited ancient sites on Earth. It's also one of the most fragile. The moment they're freed from the volcanic debris that buried them, the buildings of Pompeii begin to fall apart. Exposure fades the frescoes. Plants colonize walls and floors. And seeping water sometimes brings whole structures down. The pace of decay is accelerated by mass tourism, as millions of visitors brush against walls and scuff their feet over 2,000-year-old pavement. Occasionally, Vesuvius roars back to life and again threatens the city it buried 19 centuries ago. But the greatest danger ever faced by the site of Pompeii appeared in August and September 1943, when a series of Allied missions dropped more than 160 bombs on the ancient city. Pompeii was bombed during the Allied invasion of Italy. Starting on September 9, 1943, nearly 170,000 American, British, and Canadian troops were landed on beaches around Salerno, with the objective of seizing Naples. Although the landings were successful, the troops encountered stiff resistance from German divisions stationed along the coast. The Allies were able to hold their beachheads, but fierce German counterattacks came dangerously close to breaking their lines. To prevent supplies and reinforcements from reaching the Germans, the Allies sent a series of bombing missions to cut the roads and railroads to Naples. Although the bombing began before the Salerno landings, it escalated dramatically after the German counterattack. Thousands of bombs were dropped, and, thanks to good weather and minimal flak, most hit their targets. Most, but not all. Pompeii was never targeted. The site just happened to be located near an important rail yard and the main transport links to Naples. Since these targets were so close, in some cases, only a few hundred meters from the ruins, and since the era's bombing technology was so rudimentary, it was inevitable that the site would be hit. More than 100 buildings in Pompeii were damaged by bombs. The worst destruction was in the southwest corner of the city, closest to the bombers' targets, but bombs fell on every part of the site. A few buildings narrowly escaped damage. A large bomb, for example, struck the arena of the amphitheater, blasting a deep crater, but sparing the ancient seats. Other buildings were less fortunate. One of the greatest losses was the Antiquarium, the site museum. Although Pompeii's greatest treasures were and are displayed in the Naples Museum, the collection of the Antiquarium included thousands of artifacts discovered during the digs, including many casts of the eruption's victims. 2 bombs struck the Antiquarium, destroying the roof and many of the displays within. An inventory taken afterward counted no fewer than 1,378 lost artifacts. The museum reopened to the public after 5 years of restoration, but its storerooms still contain boxes of artifacts shattered by the bombs. Another casualty was the House of Sallust, one of Pompeii's largest mansions. At the time of the eruption, the house was already almost 300 years old and distinguished by the first-style paintings of its atrium, which were virtually intact when uncovered by archaeologists. The most remarkable find in the House of Sallust, however, was a spectacular life-sized fresco showing the mythical huntsman Actaeon, who'd had the misfortune of stumbling upon Diana as she bathed, being torn apart by his hounds. This fresco, along with many other parts of the house, was destroyed by bombs. The house was eventually rebuilt and can sometimes be visited, but little remains of the decoration that thrilled pre-war tourists. The House of the Faun, perhaps Pompeii's best-known mansion, was also damaged. The house's greatest treasures, including the famous Alexander mosaic, have been in the Naples Museum since the 19th century. But the sprawling structure itself is still a fixture of any visit to Pompeii. It was also visited by the bombers. One bomb struck the main atrium, leveling the wall on the left side of this picture and the rooms behind it. Another bomb landed on the secondary atrium, destroying both its columns and a unique interior window with preserved glass. The columns were rebuilt after the war, but the window and the frescoes of the adjoining rooms were beyond recovery. An even more tragic loss was the house of Trebius Valens. The house itself was fairly modest, but its facade carried Pompeii's largest display of graffiti, complete with advertisements for upcoming elections and events at the amphitheater. All these vanished, along with the rest of the facade, when bombs fell in the atrium and down the adjoining street. The house was reconstructed after the war, but the graffiti, with the exception of a few small fragments, is gone. The debris left by the 1943 bombings was cleared away long ago, and every damaged structure has been stabilized or rebuilt. But archaeologists still find bombs, some unexploded, when digging or conducting restoration work. More bombs wait in unexcavated parts of the site, the final, deadly legacies of the raids that destroyed so much of Pompeii. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting Told in Stone on Patreon. Every donation helps me to continue making well-researched videos about ancient history. You might also be interested in my book, Naked Statues, Fat Gladiators, and War Elephants. Thanks for watching.